I'm going to turn it over to you. Go ahead.
Hey, welcome everybody to the Friday afternoon interactive webinar. I am Debbie McRae, a licensed professional counselor here in Arizona, and I specialize in working with individuals who are experiencing betrayal trauma and or some type of sexual addiction, as well as working with couples on repairing the disconnection that occurs with these situations. As usual, I always bring into our webinar each Friday a topic that typically presents itself in either my office and in groups. And this week, we're going to talk about some of the common roadblocks that betrayed partners experience. So we're going to talk about 10 roadblocks, and then I'm going to talk about 10 focuses, or 10, maybe we'll even call them rules for overcoming the roadblocks. So here's what I see. I am seeing betrayed partners coming in, and they may be still struggling with emotional regulation, even after being in their healing recovery journey for a year. And they're still having a difficult time remaining regulated. It may be the betrayed partner who is still struggling and wanting to control their addict partner's recovery, whether it's how often they see their therapist or keeping track of how often they're doing their work. And it becomes a real struggle that they're trying to get out of. It could be the betrayed partner who is trying to set boundaries for the addict partner, thinking that they're helping them, of course, but there becomes this power struggle between the two of them. And then there are the betrayed partners who come in that I find they're really struggling because they are stuck in those automatic negative thoughts, those stories they've created in their head that have become their reality. And that's where they operate from. So before we get into some of the common roadblocks, I just want to give you a little reminder about codependence and how we view betrayed partners, because we see this as a betrayed partner's loving attempt at trying to create connection in a situation that really is beyond their ability to healthily cope. So remember, with codependence, we look at it from an attachment perspective. So this safe, secure attachment that somebody's had with their partner is disrupted, and disconnection occurs as a result of their partner's addiction. And so because they are caught in these circumstances beyond their control, we have partners who are trying to come in and try to attach and connect in ways. And oftentimes they do that and they fail miserably. They may not do it in the most healthy way, and there's frustration. So rather than labeling the betrayed partner as someone who's got a problem or someone who has a co-addiction along with the addict partner, we look at them through these very loving, compassionate lenses. We don't shame them. We don't blame them. We don't pathologize them. We look at them as somebody who's trying in their best ways to try to create connection between them and their addict partner. I love the fact that we're looking at this at them through this empathetic, or I should say empathic rather, compassionate approach to supporting them in their healing. However, there are things that come up along the way, and it's going to happen for anybody that's trying to recover from betrayal trauma. You may experience some of them, you may experience all of them, but I guarantee you that you're going to have an experience at least a few of them along the way. So the first roadblock that I see, and typically this comes after they come into my office, we look back on and see that their roadblock for this person has been that they didn't seek the support they needed soon enough. They may have had an attitude in the very beginning of, I can do this myself. I can get online. I can watch podcasts. I can Google articles. I can handle this on my own. Now, remember, after we have discovery or disclosure, there's this immediate aftershock. There's this trauma that comes in, and the betrayed partner is in a state now of crisis. So oftentimes they can't think very clearly, right? They're in this state of fight, flight, or freeze. They're very, very limbic. So figuring out how to get out of the pain oftentimes results in them becoming more and more isolated because it's so overwhelming, rather than reaching out and getting the support they need. So oftentimes what will happen is either the betrayed partner will become isolated and only turn towards the addict partner for support and help, and that doesn't go well. They may turn to somebody else who's experienced something similar, and if they're lucky, they find somebody who has had some help the proper kind of help in a way that supports them in their healing, and that's good. Or they might find somebody that's just as stuck as they are and trying to do it on their own as well. Their shame may prevent them from really reaching out in the ways they need to in the early days until all of a sudden it doesn't go so well and they find that they've got to get the help they need. That what they're doing, even though with really good intentions and all the researching and all the reading and watching in the world, isn't helping them to move out of maybe that crisis period or those trauma responses that they're having. So it's really important that the betrayed partner sees them getting help just as important as the addict partner seeking out and getting help in their own recovery. So that's one of the first roadblocks. The second roadblock is telling everyone you know what happened to you. That is a common trauma response. Sometimes a betrayed partner will do it thinking that they are helping the addict partner quit the behavior they're doing. Maybe it'll convince them. I'll go tell our friends. I'll go tell our family. I'm going to go tell everybody who will listen to me because I'm angry and I'm upset, because I need people to listen. Maybe I'm the type of person who processes by talking it out. And so I spend a lot of time just sharing and sharing and sharing. However, we do want you to connect in the right way, but just sharing without having boundaries around it creates something oftentimes called common enemy intimacy. I go to somebody, we're talking about the third person. In this case, it would be the addict partner in a negative light. And I'm now creating this false sense of connection because we're connecting and talking poorly or negatively or in not the best terms about a third person who's not there. And so it's this false sense of connection. It's not a healing connection. So we need to be careful as betrayed partners that we don't have this attitude, I've got to get people on my side in order to convince the addict partner to get the help that they need. I recognize that the intentions, the majority of the time, are very good with a betrayed partner doing this. However, you have to keep in mind who you turn to, because there are some people that have a difficult time in staying out of judgment, especially if we have really intense emotional connections with that other person, as in the case with family members. So we have to be very aware of who I share with, because if I choose to stay in relationship, I've told my family about my partner's acting out, and now I'm staying. My family members may have a very difficult time in being able to accept my addict partner back into the family or in reconnecting with them. They may not be able to embrace the addict partner. So we have to be very careful. Sometimes it's good then to think about, okay, how emotionally connected is this person to the both of us? Meaning, I want to have people that are connected to me in a way where they are very objective. They're able to give me really logical advice as opposed to emotions coming in and ruling. That's where support groups come in so nicely. And yes, we create emotional connections within a support group, but it's also got lots of boundaries around it, which makes it healthier. Okay, roadblock number 3. Reacting to the betrayal by making big decisions. Again, many betrayed partners, because they're in this state of crisis and trauma, feel like I've got to make a decision and I need to do it now. Our limbic brain leads us to believe that we have to figure it out. We've got to take action. We've got to do something. However, when we're in this state, it's not the best time to be making big decisions. So, for example, like filing for divorce, deciding if we're going to have the partner move out, these really snap judgment decisions that take place. It's really important that if you want to hurry and make a decision about ending the relationship, kicking somebody out, that you stop and take some space and time to put healthier boundaries in place. We need to kind of get through that shock and get to a place where you can start to react rather than respond. So with responding, remember, as a reminder, responding is very automatic. It's just, I get triggered, there's an automatic reaction, I go into an automatic behavior, I have the same results. When I respond, there's a trigger and I'm aware of the trigger, and I have the ability to slow things down, take a pause, and then weigh my options. Look at the different ways I can respond to the situation. So that's where growth comes in, and that's where we want to get to. However, in early days, because we are limbic, betrayed partners may want to make some rash decisions. Now, on the extreme end of that, I've had betrayed partners come in and say, well, he had an affair. I'm going to go out and have an affair so that he can understand what it feels like to be betrayed. I want him to have that same level of pain. So that's an example of a real rash decision. Or the person who goes and immediately files for divorce, right? Hoping that either they can get out of their pain immediately or that it's going to motivate their addict partner into making changes really, really quickly. Both of those are not great ways to make decisions and choices to make. They're very reactive. So it's very, very important that you slow it down. We recommend, in a general rule, I say with my clients, is that you must wait at least 1 year after you begin recovery work before you make really big lifetime decisions. You have to be in a place where you are working from your prefrontal cortex, from that logical part of your brain, the higher functioning part of your brain, rather than that area of your brain, that limbic region where you're in fight, flight, or freeze. Other questions to ask yourself along the way, because you may have some really heavy decisions to make. So you want to stop and ask yourself, how does this decision help me? How does it help me in my recovery? Another question is, am I making this decision in a reactive state? Am I in fight, flight, or freeze right now? And this is what's leading me to make this decision. Does this decision have the potential to harm me, my children, my addict partner? So we have to look at it that way as well. And maybe even, what are the benefits of this decision? Because we also want to look at what are the positives as well. So that's why we talk about slowing it down. Okay, roadblock number 4, blaming yourself. So betrayed partners sometimes feel that they are somehow at fault for their addict partner's behaviors, for their addiction. And that's where we have to remind the betrayed partner that they cannot control somebody else's choices. So when a betrayed partner cannot control your addict partner sexually acting out or watching pornography. However, betrayed partners get caught up in the early days of trying to figure it all out. And one of the things they do is they go into this negative self-talk and they start to somehow blame themselves and try to assign responsibility to themselves on somehow they did something that contributed to this or caused it or triggered it. And a lot of times it evolves around being enough. So they were not sexy enough. They were not skinny enough. They did not have enough sex. They weren't being nice enough. They may even hear it from the addict partner. And so it's a very difficult place to be. And you've got to be able to recognize when it's happening, because when we start to believe it, we're gaslighting ourselves, and we may be allowing the addict partner to gaslight us as well. So it's very important to remember that we cannot control the choices other people make, and other people don't control the choices we make. So we have to look at it through those lenses and determine who's responsible for the consequences. And that's a good way. Then also, as a betrayed partner, you've got to work on staying out of that negative self-talk and go in and work with somebody, your therapist, the person who's there to support you in working through that. Because a lot of betrayed partners have their own shame around being in relationship with somebody who's got this type of an addiction. And they do go into self-blame. And it could be a pattern that you've had for a long, long time, even prior to having the disclosure or the discovery of your partner's sexual compulsive behaviors. Okay, roadblock number 5, not working with your emotions in ways that assist your healing. So we do overreact when we're in crisis. We are going to overreact as betrayed partners post-disclosure, post-discovery. So we are in this fight, flight, and freeze response. It's important that we recognize when we're there. So in the early days, we have to recognize how that shows up. How does my body respond? How does my brain respond to this overwhelming event, to this trauma? And then we have to be able to understand what's triggering it. So it's work to do. We can't allow these negative emotions to go unchecked, whether we stuff them and ignore them, or we let them out in destructive ways, neither one of those choices are going to help you in your healing. And it's going to cause further disconnection between you and your addict partner. And as a reminder, it is never, ever appropriate or safe for a betrayed partner to become violent or to do self-harming as a result of being limbic. So our emotions are there because not only are we experiencing grief as betrayed partners, right? There's a lot of emotions that make up those components of grief, from sadness to depression to anger, denial, all of those types of emotions and feelings that we have, they're going to happen. It's just a given. But we have to make sure that we are taking those emotions and we're using them in our healing, even the shame and the guilt that we might have. So what we can do is we can learn to identify those emotions, those feelings, kind of connect them to the stories that we go in, the emotions associated with it. And as you work through your healing, you're going to work on reframing those negative stories, getting out of the stories, checking in to see if any of those stories, parts of those stories are true that you're making up about your situation or about your addict partner. So as we work and we identify and use our emotions are there to make us aware of our needs. So oftentimes when I go into distressing emotions, it might take me to an awareness that I need to do more self-care, that I need to reach out to somebody else who is what I call that healthy human connection source, the person that will be there to help me regulate. It might mean that I need to take a time out. We need to also be aware when we get stuck in certain emotions. I will have betrayed partners come in who are stuck in their grief. And so they're having a hard time, or they're holding on to resentment. And all of those things are going to create, or I should say, they're going to add further to the disconnection that you're already experiencing as a betrayed partner with your addict partner. So all of those distressing emotions, if we're stuck in them, will hinder the healing process. Roadblock 6, getting caught up in unhealthy safety seeking. So safety seeking is a term that I believe is very unique to codependence. In the codependency world, we call it enabling. But as a reminder, in codependence, safety seeking is the behaviors that a betrayed partner may go into to create safety and to protect them from being further hurt. They might engage in behaviors that help them to understand, is my addict partner safe and secure? Can I move towards them, or do I need to move away from them? We are really, as a betrayed partner, trying to create safety. And it's understandable that you're going to do that by going into certain behaviors. However, some of our safety seeking behaviors can become more unhealthy. Anger could be one of them. I use my anger to get you to hear me, right? Because I need to get answers from you. I need to know that you're safe. I need the data to know if I can move towards you. Some safety seeking behaviors leave us in a state where we have really extreme emotions. An example of that is a betrayed partner who continues to go back online and go on to the bank statements, and they've been on the bank statements 20 times before, and they're still looking for that one thing they missed. So then they're going down the rabbit hole. They're getting more and more activated. So now they're in their trauma, and then their addict partner walks in the door after work, and now they're in this state where they're limbic, and now they're going to lash out at the addict partner. So that type of safety seeking is not the type that is going to create connection. It can lead to further emotional dysregulation. So the type of safety seeking that we're going to look at is, what is the healthiest way to know that this connection is safe and secure? And that's going to be different for each person. So you need to identify at some point what safety seeking behaviors are healthy for me to do. Is it requesting that we have a weekly check-in, or we do a brief Fanos check-in every night? Is it that we have open access and open transparency to our phones, to our email addresses? Is it that I can come to you at any time and request 20 minutes to sit down and talk about my concerns, right? Those are ways that I can go in a healthy way and seek safety. So as a betrayed partner, at some point, you've got to stop and assess, what your safety-seeking behaviors are. Are they counterproductive or are they productive? And start focusing on those that are more productive. Okay. Roadblock number 7, being over controlling. Now, this one shows up a lot, and this is associated with being in the fear cycle. So there's a lot of fear after a betrayed partner has experienced discovery or disclosure. And as we go into the fear cycle, and I've talked about this in the past in another webinar, we go into controlling behaviors. We want to control the situation, whether we're trying to control ourselves or our addict partner or our environment. We go into this. And typically, like I said, the fear wraps around most times the future, the outcome, right? The fear that the addict partner is going to slip again. And so as a result, a betrayed partner might start to become more controlling. It's a false sense of security. And they're wanting to keep not only themselves safe, but even the addict partner safe. So they might, like I've mentioned earlier in the webinar, they might step in and start controlling how the addict partner does their recovery work. They might want to do recovery together all the time. I see that. We don't do our recovery separate. We might want to control like the environment, like we talked about. We do have to have things in place that create safety. Like we do need to have filters in place on phones and computers, but we can go overboard as well. I know that some safety seeking is partners watch every move that their addict partner makes and might have running commentary to remind them that what they're doing isn't appropriate or that they need to be careful. Again, we're doing it for all the right reasons. However, it's creating more disconnection. There's other ways to go about that where it doesn't feel like control. I do find that sometimes betrayed partners really struggle with having consequences to their boundaries that are about control. And so that's something you need to go in and work with your therapist on in understanding what the boundary is and what the appropriate consequences are, which are really focused on safety. Are you safe enough for me to move towards you and connect with you? Or do I need to step away and create distance from us so that I can stay regulated? I can do self-care rather than controlling, what I will or will not do for you, or if you're going to move out or sleep in another room and I'm going to force you to. That's the control. I realize that the betrayed partners are doing this because they just don't want their addict partners to act out. And it's a very fine line on the controlling and the setting a boundary. So if you're confused about that, I encourage you to go get some help from your therapist that understands boundaries. Roadblock number 8, using guilt and shame with your addict partner, hoping it will be helpful. So sometimes a betrayed partner will use making the addict partner feel guilty or shaming the addict partner because they are experiencing their own pain. And they want to do that because they're trying to possibly get the addict partner's attention. Now, the interesting thing is the addict partner's already aware of the fact of what they've been doing is wrong. They already have their own shame. And they may not admit it to you. They may not make you aware of it as often as you would like, but they do. When we use shame and guilt, what it's going to do is it's going to push the addict partner away. So it's going to create the opposite of what you want. So it's not going to assist in repairing the connection. Using shame to motivate your addict partner into doing their recovery work never works. Threatening to expose them in order to get them to do their recovery work, another way of shaming, is not going to get them to do their recovery work. So we have to be very aware of that shame aspect. And I've talked about that a lot in the past in other webinars. So do your own deep dive on that and recognize when I'm talking down, when I'm criticizing somebody about how they do recovery, the type of person they are because they are an addict, really becoming very shaming is not going to help either one of you in your recovery. Roadblock number 9, doubting your intuition. So betrayed partners experience a lot of gaslighting along the way. And so it's very difficult at many points in their experiences before discovery, after discovery, disclosure, to really trust their intuition. And instead of intuition being the driving force or the motivating force, fear becomes the motivating force. That's because the betrayed partner is still having those intuitive feelings, but they're just not trusting those intuitions that they're getting. So what you're going to have to do is work intentionally on that and really listening to your intuition. I've talked about this in the past with intuition. You've got to understand how it comes to you. Is it a thought in your head? Is it a feeling in your gut? Is it just a knowing maybe in your chest? You kind of go, oh, I just got that. This is what's happening. And then just fake it till you make it. Go with that. Trust those intuitive feelings. I believe we all receive our intuitive feelings in different ways at different times during the day. So that's when we have to slow down, do meditation, do self-care, get quiet, and our intuition can come forward. Our intuition is really important in helping us to respond rather than react. So part of your recovery work needs to center on reconnecting with your intuition rather than ignoring it. Even if your addict partner is telling you that your intuition is wrong, you just learn to go with it. And then the last roadblock is roadblock number 10, and that is rushing the healing process. Rebuilding trust and repairing the damage, the trauma that you've experienced takes time. I wish there was a formula, but I have had betrayed partners come in and want to feel better in 3 months. But the unfortunate thing is it does take 3 months, it takes a lot longer. And we have to kind of look at it as the journey rather than the destination. I know that there are some of us that are like to know exactly what to expect moving forward. We want step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, but healing is not one size fits all. It's so different for each betrayed partner that I work with because each situation is different. So healing is not done linear. It's not point A, point B, point C. And sometimes we do really well, and other times we feel like we're stepping back and struggling, and that's part of healing. So like I said, when rushing the process, we find that we may cut corners and not deal with certain things we need to deal with. So if we have our own shame and I'm just burying it so I can move past it really fast, it's still going to come up. If I don't work on reprocessing my trauma, my body still feels it. It's going to come back up. So it's very, very important to recognize that it does take time to heal, that everybody heals at a different pace and a different speed. The important thing is that you're taking it one day at a time and doing your very best at doing the healthiest recovery work you can possibly do. So really briefly, because our time is getting short on what I'm presenting, I'm going to go through 10 really quick rules. I'm not going to explain them, but I just want you to kind of think on these about how do I avoid these roadblocks? Number 1, seek the right kind of help. Make sure that you get a CSAT that's qualified. Make sure that you find codependence-based support groups. Second rule, do not do your recovery alone. Make sure that you've got your peer support. Other people are experiencing what you are. Make sure it's in a healthy container, like a group, with somebody who really has the training and the expertise in how to support your healing in that group. Have your support circle of friends that you turn to. Rule 3, seek information from reliable sources that support an attachment-focused approach to betrayal trauma recovery. So find a therapist who understands and implements codependence and how it is that part of that healing for betrayal trauma. Ask your therapist for recommendations. They'll tell you what to read. They'll give you some really great sources. Rule 4, know that whatever you're feeling is normal and have an internal awareness of your emotional states. So rather than ignoring your feelings, learn to tune inward. Know your limbic responses. Have your tools put together to use. Rule 5, set healthy boundaries for yourself and your partner. That means your good internal boundaries about safety seeking, how to handle your emotions, how to get out of your stories, how to respond rather than react. With the addict partner, it's what are the boundaries that you're putting in place, the framework around their behaviors that create safety and security for you. Rule 6, create your own recovery routine and rituals that support your own self-care, and then do it. When betrayed partners come in and they're struggling, guarantee you it's because they're not doing self-care as part of their recovery routine. Rule 7, commit to being consistent in your own recovery work and have faith in the recovery process. If you find the qualified CSAT therapist who understands betrayal trauma through a codependence lens, then trust the process. And just know that eventually you will feel better. It will get better. I can't tell you a timeline on that, but if you do the work, you will see growth. You will see change. Rule 8, learn how to let go of control. So you might need help on that. So you've got to let go of your stories, learn how to let go of the control of the outcome, let go of the unhealthy safety-seeking behaviors that are meant to control. So be aware of that. Rule 9, really important. Practice self-compassion as often as possible. That will help you with your shame. And rule 10, like I said earlier, don't put a time limit on your healing. Have the attitude that your healing is a journey, not a destination. However, along the way, as you do that journey, healing will happen. You're going to start feeling better and better and better as you're going down that road in your healing journey. So anyway, those are the roadblocks. Maybe those are some rules to prevent them, but I'm hoping that's helpful for the betrayed partners out there and even for the addict partners, because then you can understand maybe where your partner is struggling and be there to support them in a healthy way in their own healing.
And I think you're exactly right. It's so helpful to have some understanding about my journey, but also about my partner's journey. And so I do hope that both sides of the partnership are listening in. So on number one, they not seeking support. I hear often, and I'm sure you do too, it isn't my problem. I'm using he and she. He needs to go get help, but there's nothing wrong with me. And I always go, it's like you've been deeply wounded. Like if you had a deep, deep wound, you're not going to just stick a Band-Aid on this and call it good. Like getting support, and I frame it that way, getting support is key to all of this. So in number 2, tell everyone. I also hear, the common enemy. Yes, like then everybody's going to be mad at him and shaming him and whatever. But it's also, I've heard the ostracization. That's, I should just say, partners being ostracized, because or what did you do that caused him to do this? So it's extra blame on them, which is so not okay. But so it is. Be careful. You can always tell more. You can't ever take it back. And then there's the gossip circles, that make it extra challenging too. Reactive for number 3, always, I swear, 99.9%, if not 100% of the time, escalates things. It's like, it just makes things worse. And so, like you're saying, take a breath, slow things down. Can help. When you're talking about for number 4, the partner taking on the blame, I'm like, and the addicts really like that. It's like, yes, if you weren't like this, then I wouldn't have done that. And that's so not true, because there's nothing a partner did or didn't do, that could cause these things. And you were talking about counterproductive and productive safety seeking measures. And I think that's a really challenging concept, and we may have you do a more in depth on that, because but I need to know this. Like my brain is telling me I need to know this, so this feels productive. And so how do we unpack that and go, yeah, but here's the end result of that. So I thought that's a really challenging thing for partners to understand, because your brain is on fire going, I need to know this. I need to know this, and my body's telling me I need to know this, but slowing it down. And we hear this too with the partners that demand, I need to know. And so the addicts tell, and then now they're extra traumatized. So that's one I'd love to hear more about at some point. Number 7, I was like, you cannot bubble wrap your addict well enough to make sure that they never do anything problematic again. And I also think about how that steals the partner's life. If your entire focus is on your addict and what they could or might be doing, what they've done, like you are not living in the present, and you have no life. You're missing out on friendships. You're missing out on life. And I get that this is really difficult in the moment of crisis, but it's like the extra layer of pain caused by addiction. Everybody's in pain, and then this constant focus that that takes so much away from partners is obviously difficult. Number 8, I also thought about name calling, the guilt and shame. I hear lots of name calling, and And, at some point in brokenness, bad things have happened. I get it. And if we are working to move forward, things can get different. Um, uh, with number 9, I was like, I'm almost done because like there's so much good stuff. But doubting your intuition, and I was like, I think that, like you said, is so tough because, if the addict has been telling me all these times, I hear so many partners that are going, I don't even trust my gut, like, because I say trust your gut, they're like, I don't even know what that means, and so I think that that's a process, to learn and get validation from trusted people, like, okay, I'm going to, like you've talked before about, you had your posse of people, and they were able to help, and they would validate. Yes, and I had that too. I had people I would ask, and they would, validate or not, um actions and emotions and everything else, and just having that ability to bounce things off, you will then create the safe space, for your intuition. And for rule number 6, I was like, you can't do self-care if all of your attention is focused on the addict. You just can't. There wouldn't be space. And I know that number 8, which was let go of control, is terrifying, because if I let go of control, but it's a false sense of control. You don't have control, and so, it's an illusion. So the thing I can control is my actions, and rather than reacting. So great stuff as always. I've got pages of notes, but we've got questions, so I'm going to read the first one. I'm the betrayed partner and have separated from the sex addict, porn addict after years of lies and no recovery. We still live under the same roof due to financial issues. He does not use porn in family spaces that I know of, but he is sleeping in the garage now and does not hide the fact that he uses it out there. I told him I'm not comfortable with him using porn in the household because of the destruction it caused. He claims it is no longer my business. I feel like it is the same as if he brought one of his affair partners home and expected me to be okay with it because we're broken up now. What are your thoughts on this? How can I explain my feelings about this to anyone I may potentially need to explain the situation to in the future without sounding completely crazy? Thank you for this question. And you're not crazy.
Yeah.
So, but yeah.
No, you're not crazy. I really like the safety approach. And, I'm really big about boundaries and the focus really being on safety. And for you, I'm hearing you say, we're no longer together. We're separated. We have to stay together for financial reasons. So we're living in different parts of the house. And for safety for you, you need to make sure he's not using porn in the house. And in the household, I think is what I heard you say, using porn in the household because of the destruction. Well, of course, that would be a constant trigger for you if you come upon him now, even at this stage, even though you're separated, you're still living under the same roof, so it's no longer safe. I like the fact that he is in a completely separate part outside of the house, and you mentioned that he's watching porn, you assume, out in the garage. Now, this is a very hard and gray area. I'm going to tell you that right now. I do have some partners that when we work on boundaries, if their partner's going to watch porn, believe it or not, they've had to reconcile the fact that it's not to be done in the house at all. If they go to the garage, that can be a boundary that it's there, and they don't consider that the household. They don't want them anywhere near where anybody can see them. They maybe need to be in a car, in the garage with the doors locked, and, there can be boundaries put in place around that because the reality is their partner is acting out. They're still doing those behaviors and you can't control them. So we have to look at the gray area, which is, okay, what is the greatest amount of safety I can create given the situation I'm dealing with? So in your case, the situation is, as long as it's not in the house, right? You're welcome. We can live in the same home. The minute that you bring it into our home, and I'm talking moving from the garage into the actual house itself, then you're going to reconsider the living arrangement and living together. That might be one of the boundaries you put into place. Having him watch it in the garage, how realistic is it that he's not going to do it there? He may honor that boundary. My guess is he won't, because of the situation you're in. Otherwise, he would have been in recovery now, wouldn't he? And he would no longer be dealing with this, and you would be in a different situation. So the question I have is, can you somehow create internal safety for yourself so that even if he's limiting it to the garage, you can be okay with it? I agree with you. It feels like when they're watching porn, that it's like they're bringing their affair partner, so to speak, in the home with them, and you would not allow that. And so I do like the fact that he's at least doing it in the garage. Can you be okay with it? I know it's a difficult situation. I wish it was black and white and you had the ability to say nowhere on our property at all. But the reality of it is you guys aren't together. It sounds like you are separated and you have no control over his choices. So again, can we put a container around it? Can we create safety in this area? And that might be the best it can be for you. So you might make sure that there's clarity on this boundary with him, that he also understands that if he breaks and the boundary, right, he violates it, that here's what the next step is you're going to take in order to create safety for yourself. So it's not just an assumption. Lots of times we just assume when we don't talk about a boundary, and a boundary that we don't talk about is not a boundary. There is no boundary. So I would encourage you to make sure he understands that, it is not to come into the home itself. And if it does, then you're going to consider completely living apart from each other so you can create that safety. So those are some of my thoughts. Now, how do you explain it to other people? You just say it's a trigger, right? I don't want him doing it in the home because it's takes me back into my trauma. And for me, this has been the issue, and it takes me back into the trauma I've experienced in the very, very beginning, day one, and all the other experiences I've ever had. So you're not crazy. I think you just explain it through the lenses of safety, and anybody can understand it through that.
Yeah, and I was like, how sad that he's choosing to live in a garage with his porn rather than being, connected in the family space. But I mean, like that's addiction, and I like, it's just, I love that you're taking care of yourself. I was also thinking, if he can't bring his technology into the family space, therefore, like the phone or whatever, laptop or whatever is left in the garage, that could help keep the technology access from being within the family space. I don't know. But I mean, it was sad. I had this vision of somebody, oh, I'm going to just live in the garage and watch my porn, I'm sad. So, I hope for you that you are finding, healing, and some peace with all of this. It's, it's his choices. You're not crazy. But I'm sad. So, okay. I'm a betrayed part. Go
I had
ahead,
another idea. Let me just add something to that.
please.
You didn't mention if you had children at home.
Oh,
And so
yeah.
I think if children are in the home with you, that's a little bit different. I think I would have some pretty strong boundaries around that. So for me, there could be some type of, programs put in place, filters put in place, either on the router, on any of the devices that are in the home, things like that, that are going to create safety for the children as well in your home. So that's another thing to take into consideration. You can do things like that as well.
Well, and I was just thinking because not all porn is free, so that if there's financial costs to this as well, there may be some financial accountability necessary too. So, or boundaries. Okay, next one. I'm a betrayed partner. One of my boundaries is that if my partner doesn't go to 3 meetings a week and speak with a sponsor 3 times minimum, I will sleep in a different room. I'm confused if this is controlling his recovery. I did make the boundary with a CSAT.
I think it all depends on how you go about doing it, because I believe that at some point we do have to look and go, okay, what are the reasons why? So when I read your question, I'm thinking, okay, why is it important to you that he go to 3 meetings a week and meet with his sponsor or talk with his sponsor 3 times a week? Is it that you find he's safer, that he is easier to be around, that there's a benefit to you? And so it's creating more safety, Or is it, I'm doing this because I'm fearful that he's not getting it and he's not doing his recovery the way he should? That's where it's different for me between controlling and whether it's safety. So if it's fear and we're doing this out of a place of fear, I'm more controlling. If I'm doing this because I'm trying to create safety, that to me, it can be appropriate, especially in working with your CSAT. And there's so many different variables too. Did you and your partner work together on this agreement? Did you go to him and say, I need safety? Would you be willing to go to 3 meetings a week? Go to your sponsor 3 times a week. If you choose to do that, then I can move towards you and sleep in the bedroom. If you don't, it doesn't feel safe to me. So therefore, I'm going to sleep in a different room. See, that's different than, you know what, you'd better get to 3 meetings. You better respect your sponsor. And if you don't, I'm sleeping in another room. To me, that feels different. One comes from a place of creating safety. One comes from fear and trying to control. So I don't know if that's helpful or not, but I really like it when we can get partners at some point in recovery where we're working together on understanding the why. Why do I need this boundary, right? And how is it creating safety? And then what am I going to do if I don't feel safe? So there's a clear understanding between the two of you on how to create that safety.
Well said. I'm going to just move on to the next one. I asked for a divorce. I know it's challenging stuff. I asked for a divorce and now he wants to work on himself. And how often do we hear this? I mean, we hear this all the time. And now he wants to work on himself in the relationship. We took a break from SI, but I insisted he go through domestic violence classes for 6 months. He did many of his abusive behaviors. Oh, he did, and many of his abusive behavior stuff. He lived in the man cave, she clarified on that, for almost 2 years. I can't get past the anger I feel for him waiting this late. Any suggestions on how to deal with the anger?
Well, I think your anger is justified. I do. I think your anger is there to protect you. So with any emotion, I think we need to stop and just start to really get curious about it. So rather than putting yourself down for the anger, I mean, what you're dealing with is really, really hard. It sounds like there's been domestic violence. It sounds like you've, based on your question, I'm going to surmise that you've wanted him, right, to get help and to do something to create safety to help this relationship get better, and he's not been doing it. And then all of a sudden you want to get a divorce and he changes his tune. That would be very, very frustrating. And now you've got all of these years of where it sounds like you've had a lot of not only abuse but betrayal as well. So it's hard just to flip a switch and not be angry. I believe your anger is there to protect you at this point. So for you in this situation, slow it down, right? You don't have to make any commitments to getting back together with him. You may not. For you, it might be, I'm going to sit back and just watch what's going to happen and allow yourself to get angry. However, what you've got to work on is recognizing what's triggering your anger. What are the stories you go into about your anger, right? And really get curious about what your anger is trying to protect you or help you with. And then you've got to choose to respond, in a manner that your anger is not destructive. So it is a process. What I find typically is anger is is an emotion that has a lot of energy behind it. So when we get angry, our anger really motivates us to make changes. So it can be a good thing. It's like I tell my clients, it's what you do with the anger that really matters. So in your case, when you get angry, you might want to do what I did. I got in my anger journal, and this journal was for nothing but when I got angry. And for me, I would go into a walk-in closet where I could kind of lock myself in away from everybody, and I would just start journaling everything I was angry about in that moment. And what it did was it helped me. Okay, am I back? Did I pause for a little bit?
You're there. It's freezing up a bit, but you're okay.
I'm here. Okay.
Uh-huh.
But what I did was I just sat and started. Am I back?
You're in and out. So yeah, I'm sorry. I think it's your Wi-Fi.
That's okay. It might be. I'm hoping, fingers crossed. We've never had this
Okay.
problem in all the time we've done this, so I
Yeah.
apologize. But just journal and write out all your anger, what you're angry about. Don't go back and correct it. Don't go back and read it.
Yeah,
Just get it
right.
on the pages, get it out of
Yeah.
your body.
Well, and I
And
was
so,
thinking, like, yeah, yeah. Even with like, don't go back and reread it, but don't think about it before you write it too, because that's easy. Like, what should I write? Like, I love that you're saying just write.
mhm. Yeah. Or even I have some clients that go, I don't want to journal it. It's going to take me into it
Um,
deeper. I don't want to do that. I say, okay, then get a sketchbook and get markers and colored pencils. And when you're angry, go in and just draw something that represents your anger, but do something to get it out. If you're angry, get up and move your body. Go out and do anything with bilateral. So that would be walking, that would be riding a bike. Anything where I'm moving opposite sides of my body is very soothing to my brain, and it's going to reconnect me to prefrontal. And then when we get to that place where we're more settled, right, more grounded, I'm in my body, I can then start to get curious with my anger and go, okay, what triggered this anger? What is this about? And what can I do with it? What can I do about it? So that's where the anger can be very helpful for you.
So can we talk a little bit about, I mean, Dr. Rob always uses the come here, push away, come here, push away. And like now she's, made a boundary and looking to step away. But I was curious because, and now he wants to work on the relationship. And I'm thinking, well, but do you? And maybe that's part of the anger, et cetera. But, can you talk about, her having a voice and choice in this, not just, okay, now the addict's willing to show up. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a hard one. I can't hear you. I'm so sorry for the Wi-Fi. I've never had this problem. I have a suspicion we have a booster in our house, and when my cleaners come, they unplug the booster, and I have a feeling that's what happened today. So I apologize
Okay.
to everybody.
So,
I didn't think to check that before we got on. But there is that push pull, you're right. And that's where I like the concept of stepping back and being what I call that observer, take that observer stance. And we do that with compassion. So what that means is I step out of judgment, not only judging myself for not wanting to reconnect, but even judging my partner who's been the addict and who's, had domestic violence. I am just watching what's going on. So as I'm an observer, I'm looking for patterns. I'm looking for consistency. And I think that helps with the push pull stuff as well, because when we're in judgment, we feel like we need to be doing something. I'm judging myself because I'm not wanting to move forward. I'm judging myself because I want to stay back. I'm judging them because they're not doing it right. I'm just observing. And I think that helps the push pull. I also think you need to have clarity on what works for you too. What's going to be the healthiest for you and the best for you too, moving forward. And it might not be working on the relationship with him. And you may not have to have that answer now, but I do think you need to have clarity on what are your needs. And remember, needs are about what keeps the relationship safe, right? And what are the boundaries you're going to put in place around those needs? And then that way you know what you're looking for to know that he's safe and that you can move back towards him. So I think that helps the push pull too. We have clarity. So I don't know, does that help?
it does. And I'm
What are some
also
of the
thinking that from the standpoint of like, okay, now he's willing to do that. But I often, unfortunately, see this pattern too of like, okay, so the addict's willing to do everything, and then they come back together again, and then they go, yeah, and they slide right back into the same pattern. So I love that you're talking about slow it down, identify what you're looking for in this relationship, and make sure that you're watching and seeing that the actions are consistent over time, not just in the crisis because you are saying you want a divorce, so that you can be intentional. Like we were talking about, it's using this part of your brain rather than the actions or the reactionary part. You love them, you were married a long time or whatever, and so you're going like, I want to be with this, I've waited so long for this, and now I'm angry because now, when I finally draw the line in the sand, now he's going, but wait, you know but unfortunately with addiction, it's also, okay, now you're back and we're good again. And so for those of us that truly want to be in recovery, this is a lifelong journey. It's not just a quick fix for the crisis and then return to the same thing. So
Yeah.
challenging stuff. I'm glad
It
you're
is. And
back.
let me just
Yeah.
say, time is on your side. I know we
Yes.
believe as human beings, we want to rush it. We want to we don't like this discomfort. We don't like to distress. We don't like to feel pain. I get it. There's a part of an area in our brain that starts firing when we have really distressing emotions, and it actually feels like physical pain in the body. And so that's why, when we feel like somebody's abandoning us, our heart just, we feel like there's a knife in it, right? Or we get that horrible stomach ache. And so our bodies hate pain. And so what we want is we want to rush through things and get past it really fast. However, slowing it down, time is on your side. You don't need to rush anything. Just sit back and observe, work on creating safety for you, work on processing through your anger, work with your therapist to really kind of understand all the components of it. And anyway, it's there to help you. Work on feeling it in your body. Where is your anger in your body? So that's what I will do. I'll go, okay, where am I holding my anger right now? And I will ask it questions. Okay, what are you here for? Why were you triggered? What are you trying to help me with? I thank it for showing up. And then I do a visualization once I've got all those answers, where I do some breathing and I just imagine, the anger just moving through my body. And if we just allow our bodies to feel the emotion, it literally will move through our body and out. Sometimes we resist it because we have labeled anger as a bad emotion, but in reality, it's a protective emotion. And so there's, anger is not a bad thing. I grew up being taught that anger was really, really bad, and it's not
For
that.
girls. For
Yeah.
girls. Girls aren't supposed to be angry.
Yeah.
So yeah. And for me, I know that really intense anger is
Yeah.
hurt. And I can only imagine how painful this is to go, I have tried so hard for a long time and you didn't show up. And now after I finally, said I want a divorce, then you show up. Like how hurtful is that as
Yeah.
well? So I'm sorry, but I advocate for you to take care of you
Yeah.
and be really observant about what's
Mhm.
happening.
Mhm.
We are out of time. Oh, yeah, we are out of time. So thank you, Debbie. Plug in your booster.
I'm going to go plug it in right now, everybody.
All right, Matt Wheeler will be back next week. Thanks, everyone. Great
Bye.
questions. Bye.